Okay, trade recap. So I took a winning trade today, and yeah, so let's go over it. Okay, starting on the higher time frame, the monthly, you can see it's the same higher time frame context as the past few trades that we are bouncing off this monthly fair value gap. On the weekly, yesterday we took my first drawn liquidity, which was this previous week high. So, and it's actually quite interesting what I will go over right now, because here on the daily we do not have a daily fair value gap below us just yet, but on the 4 hour is where the interesting stuff really starts to happen, because here this now becomes a higher time frame mitigation block. So I did not expect price to come below a lot. I did just expect price to sting into this area to then continue higher. But as we can see, we did not come into it during the best time. Time was not agreeing here. This was even before Asia session. So there was not really a lot of volatility. And then we tried to push higher, but we did not do so. So we prevented the 4 hour fair value gap here from being created, which to me indicated that this low right here was extremely weak and will probably be taken. Also, if we go back to the daily, I did not want to see, it has not been prevented yet, but it was really close, so it's a super tiny fair value gap, but I did not want this to be traded towards, or I would not want it to prevent the fair value gap from being created. Uh, so that's why I only expected that we swept this low to then continue higher, but price just happened to absolutely crash. So here on the 1 hour as well, we can see, and this really comes down to reading the what is price respecting, what is price reacting to. Are we respecting discount arrays, or are we respecting premium arrays? So right here we can see that we during Asia we tried to push higher on the 1 hour, creating bullish fair value gaps higher, but then they did not hold, and we prevented the 4 hour fair value gap as well from being created, the 4 hour bullish fair value gap, which then made this the target for me. So here, uh, actually during London session here, London Open, we saw that we gave a rejection, because even if the fair value gaps, even if this bullish 1 hour fair value gap did not hold, I would still expect a rejection, which we did get. We got a rejection here. Now this fair value gap, as soon as we come back to this low, this is not something I would trade off of. But now instead, we came and we swept this swing low right here. So what can we expect? If we sweep this low, and we also don't have displacement in the 15 minutes from this swing high lower, this high also becomes weak. And when we sweep a low, we want to uh, also get out at opposing liquidity. So from this swing low to this swing high. Perfect. And we actually swept this right at the London Open. And that was the last rejection we had from these 1 hour bullish discount arrays right here. So then when we close the 15-minute candle with this long wick indicating lower time frame displacement, I went into originally the 1 minute time frame to see here. Okay, I wanted to see, if we go into the 5 minutes, you can see that we have this 5 minute bullish fair value gap, and this is all fractal. So this is exactly what we just went over here on the 1 hour, but on the 5 minute instead. So now we can see that we came into the 5 minute fair value gap. This is now mitigated. It is not a valid 5 minute fair value gap when we trade into it anymore. So when we then push higher to take out this liquidity here, this does not act as resistance anymore. So price has no resistance here until we reach this low, and then eventually from this low to that low we don't really have anything except this swing low. So there's not really any resistance there. So when price then from this area right here, when we the lowest thing into this 5-minute rally gap, when we closed below that low, I knew that resistance is gone. How can I get involved here? I then saw this perfectly overlapping 5-minute fair value gap with this mitigation block right here, and that was my entry, covering here because price truly has, if price wants to continue lower, this above this mitigation block is fair value, so we do not have a reason to make a huge thing to then return. My expectation was just that we sting into it perfectly like we did to then continue lower towards this low right here. So I entered there and I targeted that low, this low, the unprotected 4-hour swing low. And also the reason why this 5 minutes for value gap was so strong was because we did not have a unmitigated higher time frame for value gap above it. Not on the 15 minutes, because all of these 15-minute value gaps has already been mitigated. We did not have a 1-hour for value gap above it. The 5-minute was the highest time frame for value gap available. So also about the risk management here, I also went break even as soon as this first candle closed. And I really love having aggressive risk management because it helps to keep my psychology in check. So I was already break even. I went break even already at this first candle close. And why is that? So earlier in this trade recap I mentioned that a fair value gap that has been mitigated already is not a valid fair value gap. What does that mean? It means simply that fair value can only be offered once and should not be offered more than once if the first time it was mitigated it was respected, which means that this fair value gap, this 5-minute value gap, was clearly respected. And how can you tell if it was respected or not? When the candle does not close inside of the fair value gap and instead just wicks it, because this wick indicates lower time frame fair value gaps, lower time frame displacement away from the fair value gap. So price truly has no reason to come back to this area since fair value has already been offered. So the only way, or the only real direction price can go from after this candle has formed is lower. Otherwise I would argue that we might be bullish. And so we can see here that we continued lower quite fast. And why so fast? Because we had no resistance. But also this was also quite interesting actually, because when we then took this swing low, this was the first minor area of resistance. And we can see right here that when we took that swing low, we gave a rejection. It did not mean that we swept the low, but we could still give a rejection, which was into, we had this small 5-minute fair value gap here and this order block. So the rejection was into that 5-minute fair value gap with the 5-minute order block to then continue lower. So even if you don't expect the discount arrays in this case to hold, you can still expect a rejection. So keep that in mind. And yeah, this was the trade. Overall, I am very happy with it. It played out perfectly. Clean entry, good risk management. Just a beautiful trade in my opinion. And everything to me, every sign was pointing to bearish prices. So I'm happy with the trade.